Morning, everybody. Just cleaning up a little bit. Let's see, what do we got today? I'm Sean from Easy Street Billiards. I got Vic in the back. Good morning. Little spring allergies today. Not going to stop us now. So today's AMA, if y'all join on, you can, of course, ask any questions. Is going to be more just random stuff. I got a lot of different things that I thought of this week to talk about, but most of it's very brief. Most of it's going to be pretty self-explanatory, I think, but it's more about just trying to create like an environment for people to have a realization about things that can help them solidify in their mind what they're doing. Let's see if I can remember exactly what all this is about today. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is the process of change, I suppose. I think really what we're breaking down is I want to get better at pool. I am this level now, and I want to get to this level, and then there are steps in between. And I think that it's important to understand that the difference between where you are and where you want to be, ultimately, if you want to advance your game and not just get older between this point and that point, you need to make changes, and thus you need to change. So in a way, what you're really looking for is things about yourself that are the same as they were, that are not helping you, and then making changes to those things to help improve what's going on. So if you look at your shooting system or your mental system and you're like, oh, these are things that I've been doing for a long time and I'm comfortable with them and they work out however they do, maybe I could find a new process or a new habit or a new thing to put into that place that will change things and advance myself, hopefully, into the next area so that I can get closer to this point. So I think that it helps to understand that one of the changes that you need to make as you improve and grow and mature and develop and evolve is that your mindset and the way that you talk to yourself is going to change, and that you can't change and try to stay the same without feeling a lot of resistance. It's not going to be about just finding comfort. It's about changing in your mind what it is that is important. It's if you want to be comfortable, you can be comfortable, but normally comfort has a lot to do with familiarity, and familiarity means the same old thing, and that's not change. So you want to balance your feelings of comfort with the situation with the stimulus that you're applying to make changes, so that you have just enough comfort and familiarity to work with while still learning a new system, a new change, a new way to think about things, so that you can become a new person. And then once you get to that new level, as you get further down the list and you're getting to this place, you're going to be here. And now you're going to think, oh, now I can fill in the gaps a little bit by making more advancements, more changes, more daily developments between this place that I am now and this place. And that by the time you look back to where you started, your mentality is going to, you won't even really realize how many different little things have changed that you didn't even think were like things about yourself that even maybe existed, because you hadn't actually gone through and done the work of self-analyzing to the level of which you'd even recognize that you even had a habit in that situation where you just were on such autopilot, such familiarity and comfort with what you're doing, that you don't see how maybe it wasn't helping you, and that through the process of change, and then once you start seeing changes and then you start feeling that comfort and that familiarity and realizing that that may be what's holding you back, then you can add a stimulus to it to kind of throw it off balance a little bit and re-explore it, either through just looking at it from a different lens, or whatever, that's all change. Like just changing your perspective is an actual change. It doesn't even matter if you leave the room. You could just stand here or I could stand over there and it's slightly different, and that's kind of the point is that change is constant and we just don't realize that because we're familiar with a certain amount of change. The thing is that some of those changes are just natural processes like aging and time. We want to apply a little bit more significant pressure to make better changes that are directional towards where we want to go before we run out of time. Okay, moving along. This is a good, just one thing that I wanted to say. I think that also talking about getting better at pool and having it be an important thing, or this is just in general, if you have something that you really want to have accomplished, I would say, the most important thing is to be able to understand what needs to go into it through more of an objective lens. Once you've decided that you have a goal, wanting it more won't necessarily make it happen. What will make it happen, in my opinion, more easily than just, kind of floundering around and then kind of making tentative steps or just steps in that direction and meandering here and there, is to kind of create a plan around that goal to help you fill in the timeline of different changes and things that you're going to, processes you're going to add to get to this place, to get to the goal. And once you've gotten to that level of like, okay, these are the steps that they need to take, then you just enter onto that journey. And then theoretically speaking, as long as your plan was correct and you make adaptations and pivot when necessary, that you'll still end up at the finish line where you wanted to. The thing that I think that people really cling to that is a non-helpful thing is caring too much, where you want it all to happen right now and not realizing that the way that it is that, well, once you get to that point, you're going to be setting new goals anyway. So it shouldn't be so important to you that you have an emotional response every time you feel like you're moving away from it, and that you have an emotional response when you feel like you're moving towards it even. It's more about living your life, enjoying the process of doing the thing that you're doing, and taking a step back and realizing that if I just continue to, do daily things to move myself towards my ultimate goal, then I'll reach that goal. The thing is that you got to think about, as I'm living my life, that I can't just be so focused on the goal that I don't have a good time. I got to care about the goal, but not so much that it becomes the only thing. I got to learn how to live my life and enjoy my life while I'm reaching my goals as well. So like sometimes people feel like you can just go so hard at it. You just put in total immersion, and that will get you there. Except for the problem is that, and this maybe not be a problem for everyone, is that if you go too hard, you're eventually going to have that period that you need to rest. And if you rest too much, then you can lose the habit of getting back in there, and that can cause downtime. I think that really what you'd like to be able to do is have enough stimulus of change daily, weekly, to where you're not regressing when you take your breaks that you inevitably must take due to, life circumstances, emotional, you just get burnt out because you've been playing too much. So now you're going to take a break. And then now you come back a month later, and maybe if you had not cared so much about, the goal and played so much that you instead of just played enough to continue to improve, that you could have taken it easier and maybe gotten more progress. And this is your own self-exploration. But part of caring too much kind of gets you in a spot where you'll do things that you shouldn't do that aren't necessarily helpful, thinking that they're going to help. And that part of the process of getting better at things and realizing it's a journey, it's not really like the destination is not the important thing. It's that only is going to be the destination until you move to a new place. You can't get married to the destinations. You got to think more about the journey and how you're doing it and how sustainable it is and workable for your personality. Uh, what else do we got here? This is an interesting one. So one of the things that I came across that kind of is an interesting thing is when you want to be a great pool player, you know, say you want to be the best player in the world. And I think this is just like, we want to get to the highest level that we can achieve. I think that's pretty standard, is like, why wouldn't you strive to have better things in your life and to achieve greater things? And we want to have that feeling of specialness, that we have like transcendent ability or transcendent whatever. And one of the things that's interesting is that our goal may make us feel like we are, you know, like if I want to be the best pool player in the world, then that makes me special. The thing is that everyone that plays pool ultimately wants to be the best pool player in the world, and that actually makes it to where you're actually just ordinary like everyone else. The thing that people don't realize is that the ordinariness of realizing that you have to be humble and you have to just continue to work towards getting what you want, and the person that gets what they want is the one that works towards it, not the person that feels like they deserve more, or that they have like some you know, really, you know, high goal that they want to achieve. I think everyone that starts out with high goals, and then once the work starts to be a thing, then they kind of fall off the map. And that's because they feel like they're special enough, maybe, that they don't have to put in the work, that just by setting the high goal, that the thing will just happen automatically, and that there's no work that needs to get put in. And I think the person that is truly special in a way is the one that doesn't feel like they're special and realizes that, you know, I have to actually maybe do more work than the people that feel like they're, you know, the people that have it easy, the talented ones, or whatever it is, the way, or however you look at it, you know, and that as long as I continue to put in the work that I feel is appropriate for the amount of energy that I put in, then I'm going to get as far as I can go. And it's not about necessarily reaching that top pinnacle, because once you started out on a quest to do something, you realize that there were other people that were already on the journey that you're on, trying to achieve the goal that you're on, that started before you did, and that maybe will continue to have their life set up in a way where you will not be able to achieve the goal, because that person actually, in the sense of this universe, deserves it more than you, because they are doing more of the work than you are. And that means that you can't get that thing. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your life. It just means that it's like a comparison thing. You know, if you think you're special, then you're actually not special. The special thing is thinking that you're ordinary. That's the thing that makes you realize that you could just, an ordinary person just goes to work, they do their job, they get everything done, they go home, they do the thing, and they don't feel like they're special, or they don't feel like they have to do the thing that everybody else has to do to get the thing that they want. That's the mentality that can really hold people back, is by feeling like you're special and not feeling like you're actually just a regular person, just like everybody else. Everyone has attributes. Some people have significantly, you know, different attributes, in a sense that that makes them a unique individual. And then that can give them, you know, stepping stone progress towards goals that maybe you don't have as a person that wasn't gifted with those attributes. You know, with that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't achieve anything that you don't want to. You want to. You can achieve whatever you want. It's just through realizing that you're actually, if you set yourself up as an ordinary person that's willing to do the work and show up for the job, whatever the job is that you've decided to give yourself, that task, then feeling like you're special is actually getting in the way of you progressing, versus someone that might be just like a humble person. It's like, well, I want to get this thing and I don't feel like there's anything that's really in my advantage, so I'm going to expect, you know, that all I can do is just show up and work hard for it, and that the best things will happen to just people that put in the work, you know, and that it's not expecting my talent to get me there, for instance. This is a good thing to talk about. I think that if you're looking at your system, like say we're going to talk about your pre-shot routine, for instance. Once you've gotten to a level of pool where everything is pretty routine for you, then I think that most people, to advance to the next level, when they start to self-analyze what you're doing, then you start to develop a, not necessarily like a strict number system for the actions that you do. Like, when you're aligned, you choose your shot, then you're like, okay, well, you're looking at the shot. And then once you decide that you're ready to shoot, then you start stepping in, so your footwork is like 1, 2, maybe you settle in, whatever it is. Anyways, there's a process to that, and that it's always evolving, and that you have to kind of like, my point of this is more that what you want to do is think about when you're competing and things are maybe not going well, or they are going well. Ultimately, you have to have faith in your process enough to just go ahead and execute on it, regardless of whether or not you are winning or whatever, or feel great, because you have to build that faith in yourself. And if you have a system that's your system, that this is my pre-shot routine, and then you deviate from that in times of stress, then that means you don't actually have the faith that this is the best thing for you, and that in actuality, now you're allowing your emotions to change your system, and it kind of like can lead you to break down, partly because you don't realize that maybe you're right the whole time, and that your system is actually the best thing you can do, and that when you deviate from that, that's where you start to fail. But then the failure starts to make you deviate even more, because you lose faith in something that you weren't even following. And then you won't go back to it, not realizing that the reason why you started to fail was because you went away from the system, something that did actually work for you. And now you are lost in a place where you don't know what to do. And because you think the system is wrong, but you just didn't see that you weren't following your system, and that you lost faith in what you know is right for you, and that now you're in a totally different place. So one of the things that really is important is, for pool especially, is that if you have a routine that you think is your best routine, that's all you should ever be doing, is doing the routine. There's no better process, that you know of. You're working to advance that process, but by having the faith that this is the best that I've got, and there's no better system here, and I'm looking, obviously, being aware of what's happening, watching my results, watching each repetition, and I'm testing this system, and I'm building faith in that testing, in the ability to just fall back on, this is my routine. I'm not going to emotionally make decisions to change my routine right now because my emotions are telling me that it's wrong. Because as an objective person, you don't just change your mind because of random emotions that are entering into you that may not have anything to do with, the system that you're using. So part of that is, the flip side of that is that, if you don't have that faith in your system, then you're going to go to look for a new advantage, which is actually part of how you can grow, is through having doubt that your system is perfect, changing it, and then working on a new system that maybe you think will be better, through challenging your actual faith, and be like, well, I had faith in the system, but why? Maybe I can design a new system that will work better. And then, in a sense, you're like having faith while still having that skeptical eye about things, where you have to kind of think about it like, whatever I'm going to decide to do, I will do fully. And that if I decide later that it's not going to work out, then I have to decide fully to do and make a change. And then that full commitment is really the thing that's hard to really embody, is just to be committed to a thing and just hold the line. And a lot of that commitment has to do with the fact that you have to commit to adapting and changing things that you'd rather you worked out perfectly from the beginning. But that is the challenge of honing a system. Let's see. There's another one. So as you get more skilled and more skilled, if you look at the bulk of the players, most players, you know, that are competing are kind of at like, you know, 400 to 600 Fargo. That's like 85 to 90% of the people that compete at pool. And then once you get above 600, there's very few. That's the other 10%. And obviously there's like some competitors that are terrible and they're on the other side of the Bell's curve. If you look at it that way, one of the things that you got to start to do is that once you become a level of pool where you're recognizing that your ability is starting to separate you from the mass of average middle of the road competitors, now you have to start to think, okay, well, what are the things about my game that I need to evolve to create even more separation? And I think one of those that is important is to kind of like take the position that you're the main character in your own movie. So you have to bring your main character energy to everything, because the people that are the middle are not the main characters. The ones that do everything in this world are the ones that are the outliers, that do the extra work. And they realize that they are the ones that are changing the way the world is. They're changing other people's perceptions about the way that things work because they are on the outside of it. They are not in there with the other 85% of those people. So you have to, in order to become one of those people that's on the outliers, you have to realize that you're actually consciously separating yourself from the group in order to make changes in what you do to help hopefully advance everyone through your like acquisition of knowledge. Is that as I develop my pool game and my understanding of the game and the way that I speak about it, the way that I think about it, and I can translate those ideas to another person, my job is to embody more and more of that this is my movie and I get to dictate how it goes, in a sense that I know that I can be wrong about things and I'm evolving. But with that being said, is that the things that I speak about that other people can resonate with are true, and that I can use that as strength for myself, is realize that if I want to continue to improve and get beyond and potentially become a champion or a top player in the area, that you have to realize is that you are not going to be like the storekeeper at, you know, in the video game. You're now going to be the main character, where you're going around and people are recognizing you and you're not recognizing them as often because your name is growing in fame beyond your scope of what you're able to perceive. And that is part of how it builds. You're growing your renown as well as your skill develops, and that you have to put yourself in a situation where you're okay becoming whatever it is that happens to come. As you get better, people are going to look at you differently. And if you allow that and you think that you're just another person, just like everybody else, as you get to be better, then you're just not in alignment with that. You have to just be like, I'm okay with being, you know, like I put the work in. I'm not, you know, egotistical about it. I did the work that I needed to do. I don't know what kind of work you might need to do. I'm not trying to speak about that, but I'm speaking about the fact that I've gotten, you know, to where I am through my own efforts, and I'm recognizing that I did that and that I'm the main character, and that I'm not just a side quest, you know, like person off to the side, and that, you know, and that I've forgotten about. That's how you stay in the middle, is you got to just, you know, realize that separation is a real thing, and then you got to lean into it in a sense. Not to say that you got to be, you know, mean or egotistical and like all the other things, and use that, you know, use the power that you get through having a little bit more renown. But you got to accept that it's there. Okay, so here's another one that I wanted to talk about. So if you're trying to get better at pool, say you're working on a shot and you keep missing it, and you're setting up and you're shooting the shot, and you keep feeling like you're supposed to be able to see what I need to do. The fact that you can't see what you need to do means that you need to really, it's more like you need to have an awareness of either the way that I'm swinging, the way that I'm aiming, or whatever it is that I don't quite have yet. And that once I have that awareness, then I will then understand that shot and have knowledge of the shot that I'm trying to learn. So what you got to think about, in a sense, what I like to say is you got to create an environment where you can have that realization of what you need to do and to make that next movement forward. So I think that you can't force yourself to learn very easily. And it's been proven that, like, if you're enjoying yourself and you're learning, you're going to learn 10 times as quickly as someone that's just doing it because they have to do it, because it's their job, you know, like, so what I'm kind of speaking about is that if you create an environment where you're enjoying yourself and you're having fun, that you will have those realizations more easily because you've created that environment, versus just going through the work of like grinding on it, where you're like, okay, well, I don't see it, but eventually I'll just keep shooting it, and then eventually it'll start to happen. And it does do that, but it takes so long, versus just kind of messing around with a lot of different things and not trying to like force yourself to do the thing. You just keep being like, what do I need to do? Like, I don't know. You just get down the shot. You just keep shooting it. You keep seeing what's going on, you know, and like, oh, I got to do this or do that, and try different things and try to open yourself up to the potential to get better, versus forcing that change just through battling. Let's see, what do we got here? I think a lot of people, when they play pool, they don't think about how easy it could be if they just stayed on the straight and narrow, and that, you know, you feel the pressure of the moment and then you shoot a shot quickly, you know, or you don't plan your shot completely through, and that ends up making your, you know, the out more difficult than it could be. And I think a lot of that happens because people get short-sighted and they don't see how easily they could do things if they actually thought about the best case scenario that they want, which is not just to like win, but actually win in a fashion that isn't so draining emotionally. It doesn't have to be every match is a death match, and that every shot, every out becomes you're so tied to it that, you know, you're worrying about what's going to happen, and then you're drawing that to yourself. I think that what I'm trying to kind of say is you want to really realize that your best outcome that you can see in your mind is attainable through following the process that you can see that will lead you there. And this is a personal thing. Like, if you're you know, very process oriented, very efficiency oriented, then what you're going to be looking to do is just do things as directly and simply as possible, so you're not wasting as much energy as someone that is just kind of floundering and making it happen through effort, making it happen through, you know, you just applying maximum energy, maximum tension to try to control things and make it happen, when they don't realize that setting the stage for this, you know, out to happen through just playing a little bit more diligent procedural, you know, states, as far as like plan your shot, look ahead, take a step back and really think, okay, what do I want to have happen here to lead myself to an easier next shot? Ideally, you're going to get more in line on every single shot, so that everything becomes easier as you get closer to the finish line, so that when you feel that increased pressure at the end, it will be a simpler shot that you're more familiar with. It will be simpler to execute under those new conditions, the harder conditions. And that, I think people don't realize that that's what you got to do, is you want to always be constantly using a little bit of this energy now that you have to set yourself up to see that easier future and make it come to fruition. If you're just constantly not thinking about what's coming next deeply enough to like make adaptations to what you're doing now, it's going to be very difficult later on to have that everything come out exactly the way that you want, because you're going to be worrying about things because you're not planning necessarily. You're just kind of like operating in the moment. What else do we got? Do we have any comments? Nothing. Okay. So what else do we got here? I have another thing. So this is to speak about relaxation while you're playing pool. This is a mindfulness activity that I've recently started working on, and that I think it's a little bit of merit, that I think that people, when you're in a, we'll just outline a situation. So you're playing in a tournament, and you're playing against, you're playing in a tournament, you're playing against a good player. The score is whatever it is, maybe you're down, you're not playing well, say, you didn't get enough sleep, you're watching your opponent play better than you were playing. All these things are starting to add up. So then if you take all of that, and now you've labeled the situation, you've completely described the situation. Once you've completely described the situation, now what you've done is you've completely zoomed in on how you should exactly be feeling at that moment. And when you're labeling all these events, they are, generally speaking, either adding tension or reducing tension. If you can zoom out far enough from what's happening to delabel all of these things, and then begin again and label them, starting from ways that you can be relaxed, then it's helpful, because they could still be true, but they cannot be adding tension. They could actually be adding a relaxed element to what you're doing. So if it's your turn, you're playing pool, that's not necessarily a simple thing, but when you're not playing pool, that's when your mind really starts to carry itself to a place where you can really get yourself like worked up through, because you don't have the capacity to change what's happening. All you can do is view and observe. And if you start labeling all these negatives and creating all this pressure for yourself, then when you go out there and play, you're not going to be nearly as ready. And I think that by understanding that the labels of the way that we were thinking about things and these thoughts, and labeling the situation and describing it more in depth, is just creating a bigger cage, a tighter cage that's you're less able to flow and move around in. So one of the things that I've been doing is zooming out with my label, where when I'm sitting in the chair and I'm playing pool, instead of like, oh, we're in a bar, there's like 25 people around, there's like several people watching, maybe it's live streamed. All I'm thinking about is the fact that I am sitting in a room. That's all you have to do. You don't have to go beyond that. And if you think about you just sitting in the room, there's no need for tension to be existing, because there's nothing to describe that is, creates any conflict. And I know it's like maybe overly simplistic sounding, but if you are able to take a step back enough and try it, you might see that it has some benefit. And you could try it to, evolve it if you like to. But I think that it's simple, and for me is beneficial, because I think that by labeling all these things, it just makes everything where you have to keep track of it all, and then it gets to be too much, and that's tension. It's like, if you could just let go of it and just realize it's just you're just waiting for your turn, not even waiting for your turn, you're just sitting in a chair, nothing else, then you can use that as a relaxation aid. And then you can just feel your body sitting in a chair, not having to get up and do anything, and just be observant of the world around you enough to where when you see that the player, it's not their turn anymore, now it's your turn, that you can get up and operate. So, so already talked about that. One other thing I wanted to talk about, maybe this will probably be the last thing, the concept of integrity, I think, has been coming up in my mind quite a bit, where I think that one of the things that you have to kind of do at a certain point with your game, if you want to enjoy what you're doing and feel like you really deserve it, is you need to find a way to play with integrity, in a sense that you have to frame the activity of pool in a sense that it's a cooperative, non-zero sum, but actually an abundance ritual where I'm getting better through this activity and you're getting better through this activity, so that there's no loss. And by me applying maximum integrity, embodying all the principles of integrity, then I can then enhance your ability to grow, while in my own sense that I can go ahead and display my best skills and have no remorse or no negative feelings about what's happening, even if I was to win or dominate even the match. And because I think that if you think about this, where say I am playing in a match and my opponent is facing me, shooting towards me, and I'm moving my hand, and now the player misses the shot, even if the hand movement was not a distraction, I know that it could have been, and that just the knowledge that you could have been sharking your opponent is sort of a lapse in integrity, and that if you exhibit these types of behaviors, even unconsciously, then it's going to be more difficult for you when it comes down to the end of the match, because you feel like maybe you contributed to them playing worse, and now you might feel remorse or regret or guilt or shame or whatever the negative emotion is for doing the thing that you did, even if it didn't even affect that player. And by displaying integrity and just sitting there stoically, like not doing anything that can reduce your opponent's potential and like just make them play worse than they're playing, then you have no reason to feel guilty when they don't play up to what their own standards are. Then you can go ahead and just get out there and you can play your game, because you don't have any of these things in the back of your mind, like, oh, maybe I don't quite deserve it and this and that. And yeah, a lot of people, they'll still be able to win even having these little things that they've done that they don't feel great about. I think that if you think about the way that you want to live your life, it's easy to see that by focusing more on having integrity and less on being good at the game, that you're actually going to enjoy your time a lot more in the end, and you'll end up having more friends and a better social situation, as well as a higher, I think, threshold for ability. Because I think one of the things that people do in order to win, even when they don't feel like they deserve it, is the sharking and other stuff like that, and make the comments and all these other things. And you're basically, to a player that understands about how integrity is actually a weapon to use, and it's not something that you do because you feel like, like, oh, well, it's not that it's the best way. It's really the only way to have a clear conscience, because there's nothing else that allows you to try as hard as you want to and feel good about what happens, because you haven't taken your opponent's ability to do that exact thing and find out how good they can actually perform. By exhibiting integrity, you're actually rooting for your opponent to play great pool, in a sense, because you yourself want to play great pool, and that if you want for your opponent what you want for yourself, then you'll be able to get it, more easily for yourself, in a sense that you won't be scared when they play good, because you're rooting for them to play good. Because if you, in your mind, like, what is the ultimate situation in pool to me is, like, say you're playing is, you know, in an alternate break format, this is a good situation to explain. Is like, really the best thing that you can do is play perfectly, and your opponent as well. That is the best set that it could be, like the best for everyone, where you played your top pool, you played great, your opponent equally well, played perfectly. Say you break and run every rack on your break, they break and run every rack on their break, and it comes down to the last ball, and whoever's got the flip or lag, won the lag, is the person that wins the set. And even if you were the one to lose in that scenario, it would be difficult to feel a lot of negative emotions about something like that, because your opponent played perfectly, so you can't really say much about that other than that, you know, they did what they're supposed to do. They didn't make any mistakes, and that, you know, if you don't make any mistakes either, then now what do you have to be? You don't have to, you know, there's nothing bad to feel about. So thinking about from a perspective of integrity, that's really what you want, is you want to play perfectly, but you want to allow your opponent to play perfectly as well, so you can both mutually grow from the experience. And it's unlikely that it'll ever happen in your lifetime or my lifetime that we'll play a perfect set, you know, race to 11 and not miss a single ball, you know. And then not only that, but then your opponent themselves would have to do that as well, which is like very difficult, you know. So just that is the ideal in my mind, where it's like, okay, well, how can I facilitate my opponent having a perfect set? You can't really facilitate that. All you can do is not get in the way. And that's the highest integrity that you can have, is if you do anything to prevent them from playing their best pool, you know that that's what's happening, because you play pool too. You know when people are sharking and doing other garbage that is potentially going to take away from your game. You can see that they don't have integrity as soon as they display a lack of integrity. And that's the thing, is like, as soon as someone does something they shouldn't do, everyone is like pointing to them. You can see that. And that's the thing, is like, no one is not aware of it. That's the thing, is like, but the thing is that the better you get at pool, the less you care, because you realize that it's actually the thing that's holding people back the most, is a lack of integrity. Because integrity forces you to realize that you actually have to do the work, that no one's actually going to do it for you, and that it's okay. That's actually how it's supposed to be, and you can feel okay about that. That's the thing. By not having that integrity of realizing that it's like, oh, well, no one is supposed to just hand it to me. That's not the point of what we're doing here. Actually, we're supposed to be out here doing our thing, not having it handed to us. That's not how we want it to be. We want to fight for it because we're trying to get better. You know, it's not about winning this match. It's about improvement over time. You know, in general, I think that if you take a long-term perspective, you're going to lose plenty of games. You're going to win plenty of games. How you operated with integrity or lack thereof is really the thing at the end of your career that's going to be more important, I think, than winning championships or not winning championships. But I think that people that display a lot of high level of integrity, you know, in general, have a better life. And I think that that's really one of the things that you want to think about with pool as well, is the things that are holding you back a lot of times is just your own attitudes about what's supposed to be happening. You know, so I wanted to make a point about integrity today. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got that I want to talk about now. You have any messages, comments? Okay. Well, that's going to be it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for your time, if you choose to come back and watch this whole thing. And we'll see you next time.